There are few things in the Zelda franchise more infamous, more notorious, more openly cursed than Ocarina of Time's Water Temple. The brainchild of current series producer and supervisor Eiji Aonuma, many consider the Water Temple to be one of the most tedious, confusing, and frustrating dungeons. After many years, I recently replayed Ocarina of Time, and I was surprised at, well, frankly, how enjoyable the Water Temple is. I think it's undoubtedly the best dungeon in Ocarina of Time, and maybe the best dungeon in the entire series. Before exploring why it's so great, there are 3 major complaints about the Water Temple that I'd first like to describe to see if they live up to their legacy. This complaint is probably the most reasonable one. Even Aonuma apologized for it. In Ocarina's original release, the iron boots were not mapped to an item button, but had to be accessed through the pause menu and swapped out every time you wanted to sink or float. In my playthrough, I put on and removed the iron boots 67 times. I am genuinely shocked by this number, because I distinctly remember it not being either an issue or an annoyance during my playthrough. Most of the time, when I would pause, it would take me to the last screen I left, the equipment screen, making switching, though not seamless, a relative breeze. Even still, dungeons are meant to be puzzles you unravel, and the Water Temple is Ocarina of Time's most knotted, demanding puzzle. But I would never consider it tedious, even when switching boots so often. At the very beginning of the temple, despite the multi-stories and branching passages, there is only one actual path you can take, the only one marked by torches, which leads to Princess Ruto and the first water control area, immediately after which you get the map. I'm going to say several things in this video that I can't believe need to be said, and this is the first one. The map is invaluable, especially here. It's no wonder you get it so early. Now, at times, the corridors switch between floors and are connected even though they don't always look it when depicted on a 2D map. Even so, most of these side passages either dead end or loop back into other rooms. And I don't think remembering the water control spots is that hard. One is on the first floor marked by torches, one is inside the central chamber, and one is the only door on the second floor, clear and distinct markers. When people talk about the brilliance of the Water Temple, they talk about this little moment. If you're paying attention, the dungeon gives you an early glimpse about how you'll have to go about tackling it. If you're paying attention, you'll remember where each water control room is. If you're paying attention, you won't miss. Almost everyone has a story of playing the Water Temple, navigating down this corridor, finding this door, and realizing, shit. Depending on who you are, that key might be any number of keys. When I first played the Water Temple 25 years ago, that key was the one under the block behind the long shot chest, and the one I thought everyone was always referring to. In my recent playthrough, it was this one. But for most everyone else, that key is found underneath the dungeon's central chamber. This key is apparently often overlooked, and I don't buy the excuse. Yes, this cutscene is subtle, but much of this dungeon has been. It is the same principle as the bombable wall at the beginning and Navi turning green in the longshot room. The entire dungeon is practically begging you to pay attention. The dungeon constantly shows you these blocks. They're the first thing you see when entering the dungeon proper, and when you change the water level for the first time, their purpose is instantly clear. The even more absurd thing is that if you are truly stuck and have to keep changing the water levels, this cutscene will play every time you raise the water level within this chamber. With this lasting notoriety, it was no wonder Nintendo, and Aonuma specifically, would want to revise this dungeon in the 3D remake. Unarguably, mapping the iron boots to an item button instead of constantly swapping them is one of the best decisions Nintendo has ever made. But adding colored wall markers that lead to the water control rooms is overkill, and more importantly, tarnishes the aesthetic of the dungeon itself. And lastly, in typical Nintendo fashion, because these keys apparently caused so many problems, Nintendo overcorrected them to the point of being insulting. I harp on these points because they're often what's talked about when the Water Temple is brought up. But in the case of the original, they are either overblown or, in the 3D remake, have been remedied to varying levels of success. But I said the water temple was the best in Ocarina, and maybe the best in the series, and for that I have a couple of reasons. It is perhaps the only actual dungeon that can be accurately described as a temple. Built by the Zora and resembling a subterranean pagoda, it is an aquatic sanctuary for revering the water spirits. Have you ever noticed how the entire room reflects light on the surface of the water? There are no actual lights anywhere? This, combined with the deep blues, the sandy tans, and the lavender accents, give this dungeon an ethereal, vespertine feeling like dusk, something the 3D remake also soiled. It makes the temple feel not dangerous but liminal, spiritual, otherworldly, and therefore calm but unsettling. There are dragon motifs and statues we see nowhere else, and it's where we find the mystical room of illusion. Less a room and more of a mirror, both of what's above and below and what is inside oneself. The dungeon's theme lilts and shimmers like falling water in perfect harmony with this aesthetic. Beyond the visual to the technical, the water temple is a marvel. Until now, every dungeon in Ocarina of Time has been a container with puzzles and rooms that loop and interconnect. But the water temple is the first whose mechanic drives all of those connections. It is Zelda's first true puzzle box dungeon. I think this is the actual reason it's considered difficult, because you had to understand the dungeon's entire volume in order to unravel it. Conquering it demands an understanding of three-dimensional space. And when you do, in fact, conquer it, that success is incredibly palpable. But even beyond the central mechanic of raising and lowering the water levels, each corridor and room that branches from this main path echoes this mechanic. There are rooms where water levels and water spouts need to be altered, rooms with currents that need to be navigated, rooms with waterfalls dropping to nothingness. Each element of the dungeon complements the other. And I didn't even mention the mini-boss, also one of the best in the series, and an enemy that is actually formidable. Even this room captures the water theme, using a reflection of yourself against you. With all that going for it, it's just too bad that Morpha is such a disappointing boss. The Water Temple's reputation is beginning to turn, and I think it's because we're more experienced with Zelda's puzzle box dungeons. And I hope there's a growing appreciation not just for this dungeon, but for the series' varied and intricate water-themed dungeons that have followed this first great one. Not you. To be clear, Aonuma distinctly apologized for how often you had to change into and out of the iron boots, not for the temple itself. That he still very much likes, and on this particular point, I'm happy to agree with him.